Well, hello and good afternoon. Welcome to another online learning event for the Ontario Network of CAPC CPNP projects. My name is Sydney Bell. I'm the network program lead, and I'm really delighted to be here with you all for this event today, and really excited to welcome Drew from Dad Central to speak with us about engaging dads. Before I hand things over to Drew, I would like to just to take a moment to pause together and offer some acknowledgement that we are coming together as a network of CAPC and CPNP projects from all across this region of Ontario. And would like to start with sharing gratitude to the First Peoples of the territories where we work and serve for sharing this land, allowing us to do this work we do to support families and communities across Ontario. The network sponsor agency, which is Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health, our offices are in West Ontario in Treaty 4 territory, an area known as the Haldimand Tract, and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chonitan people. And with that pause and acknowledgement, I invite you, if you would like to share the land acknowledgement, the land where you are located on, we'd love to see that as well in the chat. Okay, so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Drew Solian, who is the executive director, I believe, or the director, the top guy, the dude, the main man from Dad Central here in Ontario. And Drew, I'd like to hand things over to you.
Thank you, Sydney. I really appreciate the welcome and the introduction. And thank you to everyone who has registered and chosen to show up today for this webinar. Really a great honor to be able to just share the information that we have gathered and been able to provide to various organizations over the years, as well as getting feedback and getting in touch with dads and hearing their perspectives that will hopefully add value to you today. So, for those of you who are here and those who listen to the recording, my ultimate goal is that you take something of value today that you can apply to the work that you do and the people you serve. And that's my main goal. Hopefully you've got some of your goals that might be even more specific, and I can speak directly into that through the content I share. So with that, I really want to let you know that there's real value in being present and engaged in this. But I also want to let you know that I hope you stay all the way to the end, because there's a special offer I'd like to share for any CAPC or CPNP programs. And so love to share that with you at the end after we've gone through the content. I've started this when I do these virtual presentations. It's hard to do this, even though we've been doing it for years now, because I love in person. I love being in a room and feeling the energy and having the conversation and the interactivity. So I do my best to try and bring that to these virtual sessions. And the way I do that, I've got what I would call our agreements of participation. Since you're here, I'm going to invite you and offer you an opportunity to engage in these agreements of participation. So number one is that you'd be here all the way through. Number two, that when you are here, that you're stationary. I'd love to instead of moving or doing other things, I think the more that you stay focused and engaged from a stationary spot, hopefully there can be more value. And of course, I want engagement. I love to see faces and see interactivity. So if you're comfortable with it, I'd love for you to put your camera on, just so we can engage that way. And it's like I'm speaking to the room, because for me, I feed off of your energy. So welcome you to do that. And of course, please eliminate any distractions. I think I have my phone someplace, but it's tucked away. Put it on silent, put it away. If you'd like to take some notes, that to me really helps you get the most out of the time that you do invest here. So thank you so much again for being here and choosing to spend your time to learn about this topic that for me, I'm pretty passionate about. So I guess I'll do a quick introduction of myself. I've been working with Dad Central since 2019, and the reality is that Dad Central was an amazing library of resources around father engagement, around father programming, and around the research, because that's how Dad Central was built, the research about father engagement and child development outcomes. And so that's one of the things that in the first year, I really loved consuming that because I'm also a dad. In fact, I'll go to my next slide. I'm a dad to 5 kids. And so this is our family before the fifth arrived. And I'm a dad who's gone through some interesting challenges as a father, 5 children, but a blended family. So 4 biologically are mine and 1 stepdaughter. I've also had twins thrown in there as well. So some unique elements to my fatherhood. And so not only have I lived the fatherhood journey, and still learning and growing from that. But I've also been working in this space for, since 2019 specifically, but I first became a father in 2013 and have engaged in it like it's my most important job. So I've always been learning. So you could say since 2013. And of course, we've been doing some, I think, unique, interesting things through the pandemic at Dad Central and really trying to drive home the value of supporting fathers, but also helping fathers build their capacity. So my guess is that each one of you here do some form of work with families, and you'll maybe encounter fathers in varying contexts within the work that you do. And my guess is there are probably some challenges that you might experience in the process of trying to complete your work and serve those families and those fathers in the best way you can. If that's true, you can just put your hand up or just throw a little thumbs up in the chat. Makes sense. And so, whatever those challenges are, or maybe it's one big one, I really like you to start now by just imagine for a moment that problem was no longer a problem and you had a dedicated solution that helped you with it. What would life be like for you, or what would your services or programs be like if you could eliminate that barrier? And I'd love, actually, go ahead. I don't have my chat box open, so I should do that first. Throw some things in the chat, because that's another way that I get to engage with you, is that you can and use the chat. Oh, where did it go? There's a chat right there. So bear with me as I get it front and center so I can see what you're saying or engaging with me. Okay. Relaxed, relief. Yeah, we all face various challenges, but it'd be much more relaxing and have a little more relief, maybe even a little more confidence that what you're doing is working if you could remove that. And so the reason I say is that I'm hoping that there's something today that will help you move closer towards that through the content we're going to share. And so the one big idea that I would say that this is my goal for you is that I want you to believe that no matter what your context is, no matter what those challenges are, you can and have the ability to help dads become more engaged in fathering. You have to believe that. And I want you to believe that. And my goal is to build content that's going to help you with that. So I'm going to go back a little bit. And yes, we've got a picture of my family there. But, um, when I started with Dad Central, as I said, there was a great library of resources. But the challenge was that there wasn't a dedicated plan or strategy of how to get these resources into the hands of, well, fathers directly, as well as organizations who could really multiply the impact of fathers because they're engaging, with many more fathers than we could one-to-one. And so the main focus for me since 2019 has been to how do we create a strategy to get these resources directly to fathers. Digital has been the main focus because that's where we're really consuming content all the time. And second was to really equip and engage organizations with more of the current research that really validates and also gives very practical, tangible steps that are low or no cost on how to actually support fathers who want to, as I'm going to share more of the research, and are actively seeking ways to be more involved. And so that process has helped us gather more data, collaborate with more people, and really deliver more, I think, value through the ways that we've been building new content. And so what I came in with a vision, I've learned, we've adapted it, but I think we've really seen some great strides. And so that's, I guess, I really want, that's it's the research and the feedback and the hearing what's happening as we're continuing to build these resources. That is, I think, the foundation of what I'm bringing to you today, and that's why I think I'm a little bit qualified to at least share this to provide some value. So, the way that I'm going to do that, again, as I all these things on my screen, we're going to start with a little bit of engagement, though, just to get a sense of where you're at. And hopefully, we'll have a little bit of fun in this. But here's where you can get active in the chat. And we're going to start with testing your father facts. So, go ahead and put your answers in the chat. Oh, shoot. I keep going the wrong way. So, first comment, the first data point, and this is as current and as Canadian. Not all these stats are only Canadian, but as current and Canadian as I can get. Can you tell me the percentage of fathers whose own baby is the first they've ever held? You already saw the answer, so we'll throw it in there. But I'd love to hear. Okay. 80, 75, 15, 20. Yep, Dever, you saw the answer. 20 is actually the answer. Usually what happens is people are like, oh, like 80, 85, 90% dads, that's first. But the reality is many dads have already held a baby before their baby's born. Percentage of stay-at-home parents who are dads, if you are quick, you might have seen this as well. 10%, 2, 10, 30, 45, 10. All right, a good cross-section there, but generally lower. And this is accurate, I'd say. This is, I think, jumped up certainly since the pandemic. There's various reasons or factors for it, but it's hovering, I'd say, between 18 and 20%. So maybe a little bit more than you might have expected. How about the percentage of fathers who take parental leave? There's a little bit of a trick question, but I'll tell you afterwards. Okay, 90, 15, 10, 75, 80. Wow, two extremes, eh? Really low or really high. Now we got some people in the middle. All right, 20%, 50%, 70. All right, all over the map. That's a broad distribution. Percentage of fathers who take parental leave. Here's the trick question. Quebec has actually had a dedicated parental leave policy since the early 2000s, whereas the rest of Canada really didn't get started until 2019 with those 5 weeks of daddy days. And so this is actually an amalgamation of Quebec versus the rest of the country. Quebec is like between 85 and 90%. It's so high because it's been supported for so much longer, whereas the rest of the country is generally much lower. So you average it out, kind of looking at 33%, but the rest of the country is much lower. It's about 20, maybe to 25%. It's definitely lower. And there are some pockets where it's even lower within the country. So Quebec helps bring the average up, but the reality is it's much lower. Now, next question, true or false? Father involvement is increasing. True, 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 true. Man, this one always just gets people. Well, nobody's really saying false. Everyone believes it. I would so love to hear from somebody on this, but just for time, we're not going to do that. The answer I see is it depends. Because if you look at certain pockets, father involvement could actually be decreasing. And some of those pockets involve, some of the around family breakups, those times where it becomes there are a little more barriers for fathers. You actually see sometimes significant decreases in father involvement. So we have to just be mindful of the context that this is applied. But on the whole, I would agree with most people that you do see a lot more, and you have fathers who are actively engaging in ways that maybe we haven't seen in the past. So it makes sense to see that true, it's involvement. It's increasing. Percentage of single parent families led by dad. What do you think? 5, 20, 15, 20, 35, 25, 10. Okay. On the lower numbers. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. About 20%. Okay. But sometimes that's surprising to people because they think it's even lower. And true or false, skin to skin contact is as effective for dads as for moms. I'm not going to trick anybody on this. You guys are experts. You know all of this. So yes, true. Percentage of dads who wish they could stay at home, and this is around the time the birth of their newborn. 30, 90, 50, 80, 100, 40, 50. Oh, again, a broad distribution, varying perspectives. But this, in terms of your responses, is higher than what I normally see. Normally, I see people tending to a little bit lower, and it's actually around 48%. I think these numbers are a little bit old for this question. I think it's actually a little bit higher. Some of the survey results that I've seen are more like in the 60 to 65% range. So, and finally, maybe for a little bit of fun, percentage of fathers who pretend to be asleep when their child stirs in the night. See some people smiling. They're recognizing it. 90, 65, 40, 50, 85. Yeah, yeah. Maybe I should ask this. Percentage of moms who pretend to be asleep. No, we won't do that. 60%. That's because 39% wouldn't tell the truth on the survey. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Love seeing the chat numbers going through and your engagement. I really appreciate that. And so at the end of the day, we have some differing perspectives. Here's what the data says. Maybe you could debate some of them. The main point of this is not so much to really get a sense of, how accurate are you on these answers. It's more of a where where are your thoughts and maybe even some of our unconscious beliefs around fathers, and how do they impact how we think about fathers in relation to what the data might say? Because we all have our own context or experiences. And really, truthfully, the topic of fatherhood can be sometimes a little bit challenging. It can bring up some maybe of our own personal stuff. And what happens then is the main point I'm trying to showcase is here that the facts and the data may not support what we think or believe. And so I want us to be mindful of when it comes to fathers, are we truly taking an objective view of what the data is saying, or are we allowing our own personal thoughts, experiences, and biases to really influence the way that we handle and engage with fathers? So that's really the main point of this. So, my request is let's be as open to what the data and the facts are saying, as opposed to relying on our own personal experiences. So, thanks again for engaging. Let's move on to the next. And really, this is more of a transition slide. At the end of the day, a lot of that data and a lot of the information, sometimes it's light, it's easy, sometimes it's a little bit heavy, but the main focus for us is just to free off maybe our past thoughts or past experiences, and again, stay as focused on what I'm going to share with you moving forward. So today, specifically, I want to talk on three things. I want to talk about what research says about the impact of dads on child development. I'd like to share about how you can understand the fathering context and what influences dads. And then we're going to talk about some practical guidance for building support for dads. And all of this is going to be grounded as much as possible within the research. So next slide. And the way that I've structured it, I guess I should have done, is that through the years and engaging with various organizations, there are often three big questions that come up. And that's how I'm going to structure how I bring this content to you. And the first question, this may not be as recent, but it's certainly still there sometimes. The question that is, do dads really make a difference when it comes to child development outcomes? And the way that I'm going to answer that is I want to look to something that we were fortunate to partner with Dr. Jessica Ball and her PhD student, Jessica Pratazina, in 2019 and 2020 to bring some research to the table to provide concrete evidence. Now, there's been some great work up to that point, but what just Dr. Ball did is they looked at over 245 different studies related to fathers and child development that were current from 2015 all the way to 2019. And within North America, the UK, and New Zealand, and a little bit of Australia. And so what they found was overwhelmingly convincing, that built upon the research that had come before. And as it says at the top of this infographic, this is the top half, I'll show you the bottom half next, is that positive father involvement is strongly associated with positive outcomes for children. I'm not sure how many of you know about the phrasing in research, but when they use the phrase strongly associated with, it's really good. So, and specifically on this slide, you see some of the benefits to children when fathers are positively involved, just looking at their cognitive, their emotional, social, and physical development. And so the evidence, as we said, was pretty overwhelming. And that's why we worked at the request of the Public Health Agency of Canada to create these infographics to disseminate this information further and deeper and wider so that it can be more broadly known, assimilated, and then applied into the work with families. And so the bottom half of this goes beyond and says, not only do children benefit when fathers are positively involved, but mothers have significant benefits, and then also so are fathers have benefit as well. So this is when you're thinking about positively impacting families, fathers, and that's strongly associated with, has benefits to everyone, the entire family unit. And so again, this is not the exhaustive list. These are the ones that we could felt were most relevant to put forward so that people can see. And as you can see, the references list down below. So imagine again this idea of more positively involved fathers and the impact that it has for families who are struggling, or families who are going through difficulty, or family resilience. And the other thing it wasn't, I think, on that slide, or maybe it was, let me go back, is that no, it's not here, or maybe it is. When you have a positively involved father, it actually helps children become better adjusted to becoming parents themselves. So it has a positive cyclical effect in terms of, what's it, paying it forward as far as the value of the transition into parenthood, which, as we all know, can be rocky. And one of the most significant transitions in any parent's life is becoming a parent. So that has I think, an even longer term value of a positively involved father. So let's just, see the value that the research is really showing us here. Okay, let's transition then into question number 2. This is what are dad's perspectives? And maybe the bigger question is, will they come to our program or facility because we don't really see them, or they're not really engaging, or they'll show up once, but then they never come back. So maybe what we'll talk about now from the research will help provide some guidance here. And so the first question, and this came directly from Dr. Balls, is wanting to really get a clear sense of, based on the literature, how do Canadian dads view their role as father? And here's what it said, is that unequivocally, the summary was Canadian dads care about their fatherhood role and they want to be involved, supportive parents. Now, the research did go on to say some additional things, what the barriers, what the challenges were, where the gaps and issues were, but then also talk about some solutions. So here's another piece that I wanted to share that I've found very early on as I transitioned to Dad Central. I've reflected on my personal experience, and then I've really tested this over the years and engaging directly with dads. And this to me has proven to be really true, is that the idea of watching one's children grow, develop, and learn, as well as seeing them succeed and confront challenges, are, and by a wide margin, the two primary vectors for satisfaction relating to paternity. And this is directly from a survey that our friends in Quebec, through the RVP, they did, and they surveyed fathers. They did both, Francophone and Anglophone fathers, and this is primarily from the Anglophone one. But what this is really saying is that, when you're a dad and you see your children, hitting these milestones, or going and trying new things, and really growing and developing, plus when they face difficulties and challenges, you see them work to overcome it. That's when you really feel the most satisfied and validated as a father. And so this to me is important because it taps into the motivation for engaging fathers and what they feel value, where they get value from in their fatherhood journey. The more that you can understand that that's when a dad feels like a dad, then you can really start to say, well, how do I help him see and understand, how this is actually happening, and how his engagement in this process will actually give him this from fatherhood. It can draw them in more. And so that's why I share it. It's been a big way that we have actually marketed to fathers. We've recognized that this is what matters to fathers, and we tried to tap into that in our messaging, in the way that we communicate them. So when you think about recruiting fathers, you want to think about what is really motivating them when it comes to parenthood or fatherhood, and this is it. And so how can we really tap into that when we talk to them, or try to engage with them, or put things in front of them that would draw them in? So the other aspect that came from this research, what I thought was tremendously valuable, is to understand how can we increase positive father involvement. And we're looking at, again, what do dads need in order to do that? And so three things. They need the skills and the confidence to engage with their children. And the research showed that that's actually a gap. Dads are struggling to have the actual parenting skills. And as a result, it has, again, a cyclical relationship. That therefore, then they struggle with confidence to actually believe that they can engage with their children in meaningful, positive ways. The other one is balance, the ability to balance work and home responsibilities. Now, some of that is external and not necessarily within a dad's control or even an organization's control, but just knowing and understanding that this is an important need that fathers have to be able to be engaged is important for how we communicate or connect with dads. And then finally, the financial and social resources needed to provide a caring, stable home. Well, this does touch on it in terms of social resources would include networks or opportunities or programs that are available to be able to feel like they're supported. And that's an aspect. So typically, if you can provide support or programming that touches on any one of these three areas, you're going to be likely more successful at helping fathers move from maybe less engaged to become more engaged. I see the chat going a little bit. Um, I'll let Sydney take care of that because I want to make sure I hit the content pieces through. Um, okay. Now, finally, on this piece that I think is really valuable, another infographic we created, and this may have come up earlier, is what is positive father involvement? And so I think that this, again, description through the research helps give us something to grab onto in terms of, well, what are we looking for? Both as a father, but also as someone who works with families and helps to fathers engage in meaningful, positive ways. And so, as it says at the top, healthy families come in many forms, but positive father involvement is, and it says essential. Again, straight from the research, what Dr. Ball was sharing. And so this key piece here, and right underneath that is what I think is important for both fathers as well as those who serve and support families to really understand. While it is important for fathers to have the time to be with their children, the most influential factor impacting positive father involvement is the quality of the relationship between father and child. And many times, fathers, or we say that we don't have time, so therefore it's not valuable. Well, some father and every father has different contexts, but the reality is a relationship can be built. Obviously, time is important, but it can still be built with limited time. And the father who is on the road traveling because he works and he's only home for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, then he's gone for 3 or 4 weeks or even longer, can still build a relationship through distance. And so fathers often, when they're not there in person, there may be feelings of guilt, maybe feelings of shame, maybe feelings, and they maybe even feel pressured that, hey, you're not doing what you need to do. But contact in any way and finding ways to navigate those potential nuances or circumstances to build a relationship is really what makes the biggest difference for the child. And so what does that look like? Well, some of it is, I think I have the next slide. Let me double check. Yeah, I think I'm going to start here. Some of it is there's three aspects of how you can do that. So there's engagement, which is a direct one-on-one time with a child. There's the idea of accessibility, so indirect involvement and availability of the father to the child, as well as the responsibility, so attitude and commitment of a father to their child. Now, I can tell you, in working with fathers from all different contexts, many of them score relatively high on this idea of responsibility. Like they think about their child, they want to engage with their child, they care about what happens to their child, they want to be involved in the aspects of supporting their child. And so they seem to have this, and as the research confirms, they want to be involved. But where they struggle or where there are barriers that limit it is around accessibility or engagement. The engagement to me matches up onto this idea of lacking in skills and confidence. A father who doesn't feel that they can really engage will probably pull back a bit. The other area is this idea of accessibility. Some of it may be contextual, some of it may be structural, some of it may be societal. There's some barriers, very real barriers around fathers' accessibility. As an example, if we go back to paternity leave, many organizations, paternity leave might still be frowned upon and it's not actually supported culturally. And so that's actually an external barrier, but the father wants to overcome, but reality is it's challenging. So the reason I share these are the realities, I think, and how what matters as far as these aspects of supporting positive father involvement. And then if we go back to this idea of relationship, here's what positive involved fathers do. One, they view their role as a co-parent rather than a helper. They have warm, loving relationships with their children. They can adjust their involvement to meet the needs of the child. And then they engage in diverse forms of parenting, including both play and discipline. And we know from the research, play is like a fatherhood superpower. And it really is super valuable. And that's why we've created our program called Super Dad, Super Kids, which is focused on play and the development of a really secure attachment relationship through play, which is, again, it's like a fatherhood superpower. Doesn't mean moms can't engage at play and all that other stuff, but this isn't the context of this presentation is not to get into the attachment play based value for fathers, but I want to mention that there. Talked about that. So another big question that comes up is that I'm not a male. This is typically a female dominated area. So can I effectively work with dads? And the unequivocal answer is that I'm going to embarrass myself with my photo here. I'm joking in some respects, but why am I showing this? So this is from last November 2023, actually. I traveled to Sandy Lake, Ontario, the First Nations, and I was brought there by, starting from the left, Margaret Wesley, Gloria, I don't remember Gloria's last name, and Sheila Mars Nation. And they're part of the Anishinaabe Aski Nation and their family well-being program team. Now, Margaret on the left has been tireless at working to create father engagement and men's support programming within the Anishinaabe Aski Nations. And because of her relentless pursuit and focus on building this, we've been connected, and I've been able to support both her, her programming, her communities, to be able to help them in this process. But I can tell you that they continue to work at it and they continue to engage and continue to build momentum across all of their communities. And why do I share that? Is because, as I've worked with them and supported them and heard some feedback, there are three simple truths that I think I'd like to share that are best practices for engaging dads, and anyone can do, whether you're male or female. And this has been the foundation of, I think, a simple message and part of our additional training that really helps you go deeper into these areas. And the first one is you want to help to identify and nurture father's strengths. Notice I mentioned the idea of play being a fatherhood superpower. That's one of the strengths that fathers bring to parenting. The second one is the more that we can help fathers feel included, valuable, and important to their child's development, fathers begin to internalize the importance of their role and their presence in their child's life. And then finally is the belief that belief in fathers. We have something in our My Dad Matters training that is called the 7 C's, which are positive assumptions that we hold for fathers. Things like fathers can change, fathers then can commit, fathers can communicate, fathers can connect. So these are positive assumptions that the more that we hold them of fathers and believe that they can fulfill their aspirations to be positively involved in the lives of their child, it's an amazing thing, the more that it'll actually begin to do that. So before I get to that, I want to share a final piece of research that, to me, when I first read about it, was fascinating. And I think it really speaks to, for me to emphasize this last point of believing them is not, fluffy or soft. It's actually grounded in science and research. So I'm not sure if any of you read that. I think it's called the happiness equation. Anyways, this is where I initially heard of this study, but it's a study that was done in 1964 by Robert Rosenthal and a few of his colleagues. And the study was on elementary age school children. And so here's what they did. They um, brought the teachers of these students and sat them down and said, look, we want you to know that we've run some IQ tests, intelligence tests on your students. Here's the listing of your class. Here are the groups of students who were exceptional and are really on the verge of some form of an intellectual boom. And then the rest of your students, they're just normal. And so they set that up, showed it to them, said, but here's the catch. Now that you know this information, you cannot do anything different. You cannot change your teaching style. You cannot do anything different. You must continue to teach your class the way that you've always taught it, because all of your students are important and valuable. And so, okay, great. And so what they ended up doing is they watched and observed the teachers with their students over the course of the next year. And then, of course, at the end of the year, they ran another set of tests. The tests were to evaluate their intellectual capacity, or their IQ. And sure enough, the tests that came back were the exceptional students came back and they scored exceptionally on this test. And then the average students, they all came back as average. But here's the catch. The group of students that they labeled as exceptional, they were just normal students. There was nothing exceptional about them at all. Yet at the end of the year, they tested off the charts. And so what Robert Rosenthal and his colleagues found is that the belief that the teachers had that these students were exceptional actually contributed to what he would call micro changes in how that they interacted and engaged on a day-to-day basis with those students in the course of the classroom, because of course they were being observed. But those students that they believed to be exceptional, they noticed they had a little more physical contact with those students than others. They had more patience. They spoke to them a little bit differently. Again, these are almost imperceptible, but what it showed is that the accumulation of these tiny, almost imperceptible changes based on the belief of the teachers actually contributed to the outcome of improved performance for these children. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that is mind blowing in terms of the impact of if we could have that same result for when it comes to fatherhood. If we could believe that fathers are capable, competent, all those can change, all those other things, what difference it might make for how we show up on a day-to-day basis and engaging and supporting fathers to achieve some of the things that they've talked about. Okay. So let me ask you a few questions as we kind of transition into the next part of the webinar, just to get, again, more engagement, not me talking so much. So first question is, what percentage of fathers say that working well together as a parenting team is very important or somewhat important to ensure the well-being of children? Go ahead, put your thoughts in the chat. 100% Chelsea, 60% Paula, 95, 80 from Krista, 85, 75, 40. Deborah. Tyler says 40. Interesting. Okay. 80, 85. Okay. Okay. Well, the numbers based on this survey result actually says 98% of fathers. So 100% was pretty close. Again, this is the data that really tells the story. And so that's important. So the next question is, this is where you can, I'd invite conversation. You can use a chat, but if you'd like to come off mute and share, maybe just use the raise your hand feature, and then we'll go through that way. But what father-friendly practices have you used support dads being more involved? I think I see people thinking at the moment. or reflecting? Maybe typing. Stephanie says listening. Terry Lee says inclusion. Now, I appreciate both listening and inclusion, tremendously valuable. I'd love to hear a little bit more. Tyler says children allowed and food provided. Yes, absolutely one of those best practices. Part of how our Super Dad, Super Kids program is structured or even encouraged. So evening and weekend groups, dinner, yeah, absolutely. A structural one, definitely really valuable. When scheduling home visits, offer to schedule when dad can be home. Awesome. I mean, that's fantastic. Deborah. Yeah. The fact that that's even a consideration and building, you're planning for when to engage, so valuable. Um, Dad's group to meet at a microbrewery. Yeah, go to where the people are. Employ more large motor activities. Yeah, the physical nature, the activity tend to be more aligned with absolutely weekend groups. So some of these structural parts. I love this one. San says feedback from fathers. One of the insights from the research is that a lot of the data that's collected is actually from not from fathers about fathers. So the fact that you're wanting to get feedback directly from fathers, it's a simple but often powerful step. And it really coincides with the first comment around listening. Yeah, tremendously great. These are awesome. Um, Dispelling the myth of babysitting by explaining co-parenting aspect. Dads are parents, not babysitters. Yes, thank you. That. Um, yeah, I've run a dads group every month for dads. We do crafts and activities. Awesome. Another comment is our program put together a new dads kit that is given to participants' partners. They're also always welcome to any of our sessions, both one-on-one and groups. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Yeah. One of the top referral sources or the top places that fathers tend to get their parenting information are the partners is like in the top three. Absolutely, for sure. Um, we reach out to fathers for group instead of going through spouse. Yeah, Jennifer, great point. When dads are contacted directly, we remember supporting as part of one of our trainings before an organization that was really wanting to gain momentum in this area, and so they put out a call, like an open call to fathers who would be part of a focus group. And when they put out the call, they're like, man, we're not really getting much back. And so one of the things we said was, well, one of the things, do you have any champion fathers or fathers, who are always coming into the facility or who are engaged? And they're like, yeah, actually, there's one or two that really come to mind. I said, well, why don't you start by contacting them directly and saying, hey, we've got this focus group. I'd really love for you to be involved. And here's why I want your feedback. And so they began to do this one-to-one reach out and personal invitation. And at the end of the day, she ended up recruiting 12 dads to be part of this focus group. And that she found that this one-to-one personalized approach really made a big difference, at least for the community that she was serving. So these are all great to hear what you're doing now. And I hope that I see one of the comments here is, well, that's a really neat idea. I hope that you're, seeing something that might prompt you or draw you, because that's a great word. We're essentially crowdsourcing from all of you the great things that you're already doing, or the ways that might be able to tweak and adjust to apply something that's actually working for someone who's, in a similar context as you. So thank you very much for everyone who's commented, who's thrown their ideas and what they're actually doing into this chat. I really appreciate it. Mary just threw a comment in. I only have one father who comes to my program, but when I call him to tell him something about the program, he is so happy for me to call him. And he works. So thank you. I think what you're doing is re-emphasizing the value of, that personalized one-to-one approach. And I think we hear that pretty consistently as well. Awesome. Okay, as we're again coming down to the final few minutes, and I'm also open to answering any questions at the end. I want to just address some things quickly. So what happens a lot, and maybe why the personalized approach is valuable, is that a lot of dads feel alone and isolated in their parenting experiences and with little available support or resources. Now, the reality is there might be resources there. They just may not have looked for it, or there could be other contextual limitations. So it's kind of like, you love your child, but at the end of the day, do they feel loved? That's the question, right? And so that's where we're seeing. Here's an email I received from a father a few years ago, and here's what he said. As a father, I noticed that there are many organizations that support the mental and physical well-being of mothers, but there's little to no support systems to help address the challenges that fathers deal with. And again, these are words directly from fathers. And some of the data, and even this is a little bit older, really reinforces this, that 9 in 10 millennial dads say it's important to be the perfect dad. And this is why only 8 in 10 moms say it's important to be the perfect mom. So there's this high level of pressure. 1 in 3 dads report feeling overwhelmed, and 36% say it's hard for them to meet their own expectations at work and home. Again, I think this really maps onto that idea of balance that I mentioned before. And this is from Baby Center research on millennial dads that these stats are from. So as you can see, can sometimes be the context of a dad. I'm not saying moms don't have this in the days where they want to pull their hairs out, but fathers are definitely feeling pressure too. And so as we move towards the end and I open up for questions, hopefully I've been able to share some information that has been valuable. Again, my goal is that you could learn something that you can apply to your context. And then ultimately, as we move forward, what choices and what actions can we take to support a whole family health? And one of the things I mentioned is that I wanted to talk about a special offer, and that could potentially help support that. And I want to share that we offer training through our My Dad Matters online certification program that really helps you engage, connect, and recruit dads into your programs. And the My Dad Matters training was created in 2015. It was a collaborative partnership with Psychology Foundation of Ontario and some of the other projects and professionals around child development. And so it's designed to help you build an action plan, grow partnerships, and really maximize the opportunities that are in front of you to build momentum. And it's about you learning your context, understanding fathers and the research, and then how to actually activate in your programs. So it's more about equipping you than necessarily telling you, here's what you have to do. And we have built an online certification module. It takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to go through because it walks you through our whole toolkit from evaluation of your current context, talking through ways that you can begin to plan and apply best practices, and then even steps to build some form of evaluation into the program or the choices that you make as far as ways to engage. And again, there's an idea of father friendly or dads only, and it's really up to you to what you have resource wise, staffing wise, facility wise, etc. So this is an online certification program that is on demand, accessible at any point in time, and you can, when you complete it, you will have be certified as a father friendly staff member or father friendly organization. And so one of the things that it does, it helps you understand what's the importance, which we touched on today. How do you build strong engagement action? How do you assess your strengths? How do you develop partnerships? How do you recruit? How do you develop, train, and recruit staff to support that, and where to find additional resources? And so, as I said, the special offer, I'd love to give 25% off to any CAPC or CPNP program that wants to engage in the online certification program. And the simplest way to do that is just to send me an email at drew@dadcentral.ca. Let me know that you attended this webinar, and then I'll send you a specific code for you to get your 25% off the online certification program. So that is essentially it. We're close to the top of the hour, but time if there are questions. So I just want to say thank you again, Sydney, for your organization and putting this together. Thank you, everyone, for registering and being interested in this topic, and of course, for your engagement today. I really appreciate it. Open to questions.
Well, thank you, Drew. I do have a quick question. Somebody asked about availability of the slide deck. Is that something that you share out?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide a slide deck. So is the best way for me to send it to you, Sydney, and then you
Yes,
can make it available? Okay, happy
sure.
to.
I'll
I'll put
include
it in
it
a
with,
PDF format.
perfect. Thank you. I'll include it with the recording link that we share forward. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions for Drew?
I just saw a question in there
Yeah.
from Teal. The stats that I share, do you have statistics around dads from the vulnerable populations we typically serve?
Oh, good
So
question.
it is a good question. And um, my clarification of this question is, are you talking about the stats at the beginning in terms of the father facts, or are you talking about different stats?
Sort of throughout, Drew, you talked about like different stats of how involved dads want to be and sort of what their barriers were and how to balance. And well, I believe probably sort of what you're talking about in terms of actions might work across the board. I know that the people that we serve, the families that we serve, tend to interact with the world in a different way and have different pressures and challenges. And so I just wondered if you had any specific information around how dads feel or how involved they are in terms of the populations that we serve.
Okay. And may I ask, what population do you serve?
Well, all the CAPC and CPNP programs are sort of designed to help serve. We all focus sort of on a little bit of a different area, but anyone that is facing risks around helping their children thrive, typically, if you think about sort of your general social determinants of health, so not just economic, but certainly economic is a big barrier, and then any of the other social determinants of health that really impact the ability of parents to help their children thrive and be the best that they can be. I see Lee popping sort of some things
Yes.
in there. So like single parent families, teen parents, poverty, new immigrants, English is a second, third, fourth language. Um, those are the ones that are
Isolation.
isolation, remote communities,
Yeah.
any of those barriers are things that our families may deal with.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. The quick answer is those stats generally and the research applies to those communities as well. And in fact, some of the research looked at some of those primarily social determinants of health, as the real starting point of then how you go deeper into the evaluating the research and the efficacy of some of this data. So the short answer is the stats apply to those populations as well. Of course, there will be pockets and there will be potentially individual differences, and this is a rather complex based on some of the populations as far as their life circumstance and what's going on. But on a whole, a high level, they apply to these same populations as well. And one of the organizations in the US called Fathers Uplift, run by Dr. Charles Stanley, they work primarily with Black, Hispanic, and other traditionally marginalized groups of fathers. And they see the exact same thing, especially when it comes to the desire, the internal motivation of fathers and for engaging in positive father involvement with their children. And they all come from a lot of them come from those similar contexts that you're referring to. Does that help answer that question?
It does, thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome.
Drew, I
Um,
see Tammy asked around repeating the information in regards to certification. And she's wondering, was that for the Super Dad, Super Kids training?
oh, thank you for that clarification question, Tim. That is and I'll go back to that slide. Our My Dad Matters online certification training. This is where you go through the planning, evaluation, best practices, recruitment, etc. And it really is designed to take a more of a high level look at what you're doing, what you're equipped to do, the populations you serve, best practices on fathers, and how can you begin to move, like, let's say, one step closer to engaging or supporting fathers who are part of your constituency. Super Dad, Super Kids is a standalone father engagement program that we have created that is an 8-session program that we train you on the research foundation of how the program was even built, and then we equip you with the 8 sessions that are adaptable and modifiable to everyone's context. And we give you we give you the entire done for you program that you that can take and apply. You've got all the slides, you've got all the content, you've got all the activities, you've got marketing materials. That's a different one. So My Dad Matters online certification is one thing, and Super Dad, Super Kids facilitator training is a separate thing.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah.
Any final questions or comments for Drew before we say goodbye for the afternoon? I did post a link in the chat a while back, our little event survey. Please, it would be really helpful if you're able to take a moment to share your thoughts on today's event. I do want to say, Drew, we do have some tentative plans for you to come back maybe in March sometime. We don't have any specifics at this point, but keep an eye out for information for more coming together for more learning around father engagement. And we also typically do an event in June, a network event with a focus around fathers as well. So hopefully we can continue, engaging in this momentum and supporting that learning together. I'm seeing a lot of gratitude for you in the chat, Drew, and I'd like to offer it as well. Thank you for your time. I know you had a busy day today, so I appreciate that you were able to be with us and offer your experience and wisdom. And unless one more check-in to see if anybody has anything they want to say, we can sign off. And yeah, back to you, Drew. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
I just want to say thank you, Sydney. And Tyler had a question about where I'm assuming where I'm based. So I'm based out of Kingston, Ontario, and Dad Central has our office out of Carleton Place, Ontario.
And you're at dadcentral.ca, right?
Yeah. We're primarily, everything you can access on dadcentral.ca. We've got a whole bunch for those who work in family services or serving families. We've got a whole section of our website designed specifically for you.
So many awesome resources. Definitely. Excellent.
Awesome.
Thanks very much again. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and that we cross paths again soon at another upcoming event. Okay. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.